Welcome to Monday, June the 9th, regular meeting at the Glen Estee Pack Center. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Cropper, can you do roll call from recess, please?
Ms. Sanborn?
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Present.
Mr. Waldman?
Present.
Mr. Lewis?
Present.
Motion carried. Public comment. The first public comment is from Kathy Stemmer, board seat.
Hello, board members. My name is Kathy Stemmer, and I live at 1875 Wolfangle Road. I am a teacher in West Claremont with 35 years of experience. I speak today to voice my support for Jim Rudy to be approved to fill the seat that was sadly vacated by the death of Mark Merchant. Mr. Rudy had the support of the community in the last election. He was the next highest vote getter, with the spread only a few percentages apart. I have heard of Mr. Rudy early in my own career. Principals, teachers, students, and community leaders have only ever spoken in praise of his dedication to this West Claremont community. He is a proven collaborator with the key qualities of honesty and integrity. While reading about Mark Merchant in the newspaper, it occurred to me that in truth, they share many of the same qualities. It was quoted in the paper that board member Steve Waldman said that he got to know Mr. Merchant during the recent Ohio School Board Association conference and found him to be someone that was genuine and someone you could talk to work through issues. I feel the same can be said of Jim Rudy. The paper quoted his wife as saying he always had a passion for helping youth, and he definitely served as a mentor. I don't believe anyone here can dispute that Mr. Rudy has shared that same passion for youth. Although I appreciate Ms. Sanborn's loyalty to her friend and former board member, I would like to respectfully say that a board seat is not private property to be bequeathed or promised to another person. It is a public seat, and the board is charged with the duty to fill that seat. I feel compelled to remind you that a board member's first responsibility is to the students, and the board should be focused on providing the best education for our children. I unquestionably believe Mr. Rudy would do that, and today I stand up for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Ladow. Endorsement of board member applicant Denise Smith.
Hi, my name is Linda Ladow. I live at 1186 Cedar Run Court. I've lived in the district for 32 years. My sons both graduated from Glen Estee High School 02 and 06 and OSU also. What I'd like to do is I'd like to give support to Denise Smith. She's always been a hard worker and dedicated to her time and effort to the students, and she has a great passion towards children and students in all education levels and environment. She's been a board member before, and she gave 110%. That's pretty much all I say, so I would like you to consider her for the position also.
Thank you. Sharon Woods, replacement of board member.
My name is Sharon Woods. I reside at 1175 Elm Ridge Drive, Amelia. I am a retired teacher in West Claremont Schools, and I have known Jim Rudy since 1989 when we first met, and I would like to reiterate what Kathy Stemmer said. One thing I do want to point out is that Mr. Rudy was the next highest vote getter. He did run for the office. If other people who wanted to be part of the board, they should have run, rather than all of a sudden say, oh, I want it now. I highly support Mr. Rudy. He is ethical, he's honest, he's loyal, and he's well respected in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Pointer, School Board Member Replacement.
My name is Karen Pointer. I live at 111 St. Andrews Drive, and I'm here to support Jeff Coles for the position. I admire his hard work and his integrity as he has served our community. He's already done that for several years now with the website, saveclaremontschools.org. And he's stuck his neck out there to say what he really believes and what he thinks. And sometimes people are afraid to do that. And so I'm really impressed with him that way. And he's also, let me look at my notes. So I appreciate him doing that. He does his homework. He's gone to sit on other school boards to see what works with them and what doesn't work with them. And I appreciate that he does his homework. He attends school board meetings, not all the time, but I understand he does on a regular basis. And he's already leading the community with what he's doing for the community with the website. And so the thing that I think is so cool is that more people can get to know somebody like that, where you can contact him, you can talk to him, you can find out what does he think about this or that. And I think the more you can know somebody, since I'm from Chicago, I haven't been through the West Claremont schools, but so I can get to know him, and I find that the more I do know him, the more I can trust him. And I think anybody here would feel the same way. Appreciate your patience. So I think that he's somebody that we could all trust to do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Bond, Jeff Coles' recommendation.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jennifer Bond, and I live at 3950 Randolph Lane, and I've lived in the West Claremont School District for over 12 years. I'm here tonight to offer my recommendation of Jeff Coles to the board and to this community. I've been acquainted with Jeff for about 3 years, and I've found that I do not agree with him on all issues, but I have found him to be able to listen with an open mind, disagree agreeably, and hold a difference of opinion with respect and decency. I think these are qualities that would be a good addition to this board. I represent families in the West Claremont School District who do not have children in the system. I have homeschooled my own 2 children for over 12 years. I have voted in every election for the past 4 years, and I have stood at Withamsville Church of Christ most of every one of those election days. I have watched the community come out to vote on school levies, and based on the resounding defeat of these levies, I believe that our community does not believe that giving our schools more money will solve its problems or equal a better education for our children. You may say that as someone with no children in the system, that I don't care about the children in our community, and I want you to know how ridiculous that is. You don't have to be very smart to know that all of our children need the very best education we can possibly give them for the betterment of our community, our state, and our country. We all lose when our children don't learn. As a homeschool parent, I can tell you, money does not equal quality in education. West Claremont needs board members who will look for creative, sound, fiscally responsible ways to improve education for our children. And I believe Jeff Coles is the best candidate to fulfill those requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Fraley, appointment of Jeff Coles to replace Mark Merchant.
Could you ask him if taking pictures of the critic on the flashlight, please?
Good evening, board members. I'm here to solicit support for Jeff Coles for replacement of Mark Merchant. Mark was my friend. We scouted a lot together. We talked a lot. He was elected as a conservative, fiscal responsibility person. He was so concerned. He was out with his vote in his community. He says, we don't make that much money in this community. Why should we support these levies? So he looked for alternatives. I've known Jeff about 5 years through the Union Township Central Committee, through the Republican Central Committee in this county, and I find him to be very responsible, very trustworthy, loyal, and helpful. His blog is open to all. I've not been on there. I'm not a blogger myself. We've been taught how to do it. Some of the people who are leading blog sessions. I stand before you as a product of this West Claremont. I went to school at Mount Carmel in elementary. I graduated from Leslie. In the 4th grade, we had such crowding. I went to school in a church. 3rd grade was in the basement. I wouldn't put anybody in the basement of that church today. Freshman year, no better, still crowding. We had split sessions. Freshman year went from 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. Getting home, it's dark in the winter, real bad. Oh, it was better though our sophomore year. We had a brand new high school at Amelia, but we didn't have any buses. This bus stuff's old hat to me. I don't have any problem with that. Get along with it. Junior year, new high school. Everything is great. Glenesee, yeah, 50 years. I'm the old geezer in the building. My point is, my parents didn't have a choice. We didn't have kindergarten 50 years ago. Public education was all there was. Oh, we couldn't afford parochial school. We couldn't afford private schools. I think I had a pretty good life out of it. I'm not worried. I'm a retired pharmacist. I sub in the district. I see what other school systems are doing.
30 seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Okay. I would suggest you vote support another fiscal conservative replacing Mark Merchant with Jeff Coles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Howard Hines, replacing the deceased board member.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Howard Hines. I live at 4848 Powderhorn Drive, Cincinnati 45244. I've lived in Claremont County since 2004. I'm a retired life insurance agent. I worked for AXA Equitable for over 4 decades. And I learned a number of things as a life insurance agent and a salesman. One of them was, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Now, the grammar of that's not very good, but you get the idea. To change the policies, you have to change the people. And I don't pretend to be an expert on school boards, school systems, or anything else, although I'm pretty well educated myself. But the point is, if you want to change the policies of the West Claremont County school system, you have to change the people. It's my understanding that there have been some fiscal problems in the past. You want to change the policies, you need to change the people. Mark Merchant was a fiscal conservative. So is Jeff Coles, and I'm speaking on his behalf today. And I urge your support for him. One more thing. I learned as a life insurance agent and as a man who's been married for over 5 decades to my first wife. I'm the father of 2 children, 2 children-in-law, and 10 grandchildren between the ages of 16 and under construction. I learned that when your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall. That's a lesson that I always taught my clients, and I would ask you to consider a fiscal conservative for the position that's open on the board, Jeff Coles. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steveno, could you turn off the flash off of your camera tonight? Thank you. Stuart Kennedy, open board position, replacement.
My name is Stuart Kennedy, and I live at 600 Kennedy Trails. Mr. Mark Merchant was a registered Republican. Mr. Merchant ran on a platform based on fiscal responsibility. He believed school board could make better financial decisions and could return services to the students and families of West Claremont, while at the same time not burdening the residents of the community with higher property taxes. The voters of West Claremont have spoken loudly in election after election that something needed to change and that they do not support increased taxes. The voters also spoke loudly last fall by electing a school board in which the majority of the members ran as fiscal conservatives. Since the new board took office, West Claremont has reduced student athletic fees, scheduled the return of some student services and programs cut by the prior board, and seen the district's financial forecasts go from $20 million deficit to an anticipated $4 million surplus. All of this occurred without the passage of a new levy, which the community had been told by the prior board was necessary to avoid being put into fiscal emergency by the state of Ohio. When Mr. Merchant was alive, the board was on track to satisfy the demands of the voters of many groups in the community, those who did not want increased property taxes and those who wanted a return of services and/or reduced fees for the students. The small minority that desire a return to the ways of the prior school board are obviously blind to what the community has demanded. The responsibility of whoever appoints Mr. Merchant's replacement, whether it's a majority of the remaining board members or an appointment by Judge Shriver, is to find the candidate that most closely resembles who the voters chose last November. Anything different would be a disservice to the voters that participated in our last election and set the board on its current track. I believe Jeff Coles is the best choice to replace Mark Merchant. Jeff is a registered Republican and also believes in fiscally conservative approach to managing the district. In November of 2013, the voters in our community elected a Republican for school board, and I believe a Republican should replace him. Some may say this is a nonpartisan position and one's party affiliation should not be considered. In 2011, Tammy Brinkman sought the endorsement of the Union Township Republican Central Committee. In 2013, Steve Waldman sought the same. So obviously, these two current board members believe in party affiliation must be important since they sought the Republican endorsement. Yet they seem to currently favor appointing Mr. Rudy to the position, even though if Mr. Rudy is the same James Rudy Jr., living at 4525 New Market Court, Batavia, Ohio, is a registered Democrat according to the Board of Elections. That does not seem to make sense. Last week, 70% of the current Union Township Republican Central Committee signed a letter of support for Jeff Coles. So Mr. Coles does have the backing of the local Republican Party. While still on the topic of politics, it is also confusing why Mr. Waldman would favor Mr. Rudy when Mr. Waldman volunteered his time at my home last spring, helping the efforts of the Claremont Liberty PAC to elect Jim Lewis.
You're just about out of time.
Elect Mr. Jim Lewis and Mark Merchant. The PAC also opposed Mr. Rudy. It seems as if Mr. Waldman can't figure out who he supports. Do I have any time left, ma'am?
You do not have any time left.
All right, thank you very much.
Ken Walston, open seat on the board.
Good evening. My name is Ken Walston. I'm a Pierce Township executive for the Claremont County Republican Party. I'm here tonight to speak to why Mr. Jeff Coles should be appointed to the open seat of the West Claremont County Board as a result of the death of Mr. Mark Merchant. Mr. Coles is a registered Republican, as was Mr. Merchant, and I believe a Republican should place him. Mr. Coles has attended many school board meetings and follows issues and decisions of the board by providing update, information, and commentary through his blog, SaveClaremontCountySchools.org. Many in the community regard him as a highly knowledgeable on issues relating to our local schools. The voters showed that they wanted to change the direction of the board last November when they elected two liberty-minded individuals to replace supporters of the former school board. The voters showed that they wanted to change the direction of the board last November when they elected those two people. It would be a slap in the face to the voters of the district to now fill the position with someone who was the exact opposite of Mark Merchant. If the voters wanted Jim Rudy as a member of the West Claremont School Board, they would have elected him when he ran last year. However, district voters chose to elect Mark Merchant and gave the majority to the folks who disagree with the way the former school board conducted the district's business. To go against the will of the district voters and change the balance of power on the board would be a travesty. Leave it to the voters, who will have another opportunity next election to change the makeup of the board should they choose to do so. Until then, everyone should abide by the district voters' decision to change the direction of the board and appoint Jeff Coles to the open seat on the West Claremont County School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Maurer, School Board.
My name is Neil Maurer, 4328 Fisher Lane, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45244. I'm here tonight to speak about the open position for school board caused by the untimely passing of my friend, Mark Merchant. I was present at the meeting when Mark decided to run for school board. We discussed the issues facing the West Claremont School District, and we felt that a true conservative outsider that would represent all of the interests of the community, including the kids, needed to run to help right the ship that is the West Claremont School District. Over the last two election cycles, the voters in the West Claremont School District have elected people that either sought the Republican Party endorsement or were supported by true fiscal conservatives, i.e. Tammy Brinkman and Steve Waldman. Furthermore, the public voted against the incumbents and educators in an attempt to bring accountability and a fresh perspective to the West Claremont School Board. So now Jeff Coles would like to be appointed to the school board. I have known Jeff for almost 4 years. He is one of my closest personal friends. In the past, he ran for school board and lost in a recount to the current board president, Tina Sanborn. He is involved in the community as a coach, neighborhood treasurer. He runs community meetings to discuss educational issues and improve schools. He has open communications with board members of neighboring school districts. Over the last 4 years, he has made many suggestions to the past members of the West Claremont School Board, and they have all been denied. I find it quite ironic that many of his recommendations are the same ones put forth by the state auditor just a few months ago. Jeff takes education seriously. He homeschools his daughters, just like many of my friends. In fact, a lot of my neighbors have pulled their kids out of West Claremont too. They are tired of the same old garbage that West Claremont has become. If you speak out, you get lied to or retaliated against. If you appoint a former teacher and union president, then the relentless levies and the stench will continue, and more families will be forced to leave their homes and a community they love. Furthermore, we must also remember that Jim Rudy lost the election. The voters did not pick him last fall. Why would anyone believe the voters and the community have changed their minds since? Well, it is not a true apples-to-apples comparison. Jeff Coles received 6,984 votes from our community in 2011. Jim Rudy only received 4,785 in 2013. One could loosely say that Jeff Coles has 2,199 more supporters than Jim Rudy for this position. I am at least one of them. A few comments for board member Brinkman. You were on the prior board that declared time and time again that fiscal emergency was coming and a levy was our only hope. But revised projections now showing a surplus, I can only assume you and the prior board were incompetent or dishonest. I don't know which, but how can you have a $24 million swing in the forecast? You either were totally clueless or incompetent in your duties to the community, or you're flat out dishonest and chose to hide the facts and try to push through a levy.
We must have decorum in this meeting this evening.
Ms. Sanborn, I thank you for you and your board's time hearing my comments. I think a majority of you and Judge Schreiber will honor what the community has already stated loud and clear. The path is what they desired this board to take. Jeff Coles is the candidate most closely resembling my friend, Mark Merchant, who the voters elected.
Your time's up.
Sit down.
Must have the quorum in this meeting this evening. Thank you. Dr. Klein, we have some recognition this evening.
We do. Thank you, Ms. Sanborn. I'm pleased to introduce Kevin Maloff, who is the president of our Education Foundation, newly formed Education Foundation, as well as Denise Smith, who would like to make a presentation to Ann Irwin, our director of the dance company. I invite you to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This will be a little more positive. On May 21st, the West Claremont Education Foundation held its first fundraiser in participation with the West Claremont Dance Company at the Holiday Inn Eastgate. This event was a dinner dance recital attended by over 100 people, which really allowed us to fulfill our mission at the foundation, which is not only raising money to provide grants, but also allowing us to showcase all of the positive efforts that the students and the administration are doing here at the district. As part of this, I want to, thank many of you who attended that evening. I also wanted to thank some of our corporate sponsors who are now realizing that the commitment to the students in the district not only come from parents and grandparents who attend those events, but they're starting to recognize that they also have to join in partnership with us. Some of those corporate sponsors were Park National Bank, Mercy Healthcare, PNC Bank, American Modern Insurance, and the Midland Foundation, UC Claremont, the Bill Rapp Law Firm, and Frost Brown Todd. Denise would also like to say a few words about the event in recognition of the West Claremont Dance Company.
Thank you.
The highlight of the event was that we had students sitting at each of the tables for dinner before they performed, and the comments that we got were resounding from the people that attended, that how bright and how articulate our students were and how passionate they were about their school and their dancing. So I think a lot of people's eyes were open as to what our students are really accomplishing, and I put a lot of that on Ann Irwin because she is the director of the West Claremont Dance Company, and she has done an awesome job. My daughter was in the very first evening of dance, and I guess that was 12 years ago. And so it's always a treat for me to go back and see how accomplished our young students are and how well they dance. So tonight, as a result of our corporate sponsors and our school board members that were in attendance, Mrs. Brinkman, Mrs. Sanborn, Dr. Klein was there, and Mrs. Cropper representing the district, we are going to present Mrs. Ann Irwin, the director of the West Claremont Dance Company, and she has her president of the Dance Honor Society? Am I getting that correct, Wesley? Or just the dance company? Okay, Wesley Thomas is the president of the West Claremont Dance Company, and he will be here with Mrs. Irwin tonight to accept a check for $500 on behalf of the West Claremont Education Foundation.
Thank you all very much, and I was privileged to be able to attend that event. It was the first formal event of the new Education Foundation. It was a huge success, and of course our kids were bright, shining stars at that event. They did a great job, represented our district well, and couldn't be more proud of them. So thanks to the students and the West Claremont Foundation. This is what it's supposed to be doing, is helping reinforce the good work of what's going on in our school district. So very, very great night. That was a great night.
Thank you. Mrs. Cropper, approval of minutes.
Mrs. Sanborn, if I could please, we've had a couple of questions from people who did turning cards, and they're wondering why their name wasn't called, so I just wanted to let them know that their name will be called at the second public speaking.
Correct. There are 3 individuals that you will be speaking towards the end of the meeting.
Therefore, going on with the treasurer's agenda, the first thing you have on your agenda tonight are the minutes from the regular meeting held May 27th. I respectfully request that you approve those minutes as presented.
You've heard the recommendation from Mrs. Cropper. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have motion and second. Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Treasurer's business, donations.
Next item on the treasurer's agenda this evening are donations. I don't know. Yours is working. Okay. The board has one donation on the list tonight. It's a very generous donation received from the Stephen L. Nicholas Band Memorial Fund. They donated $6,178 to the Amelia Band in order to purchase instruments for students who cannot afford an instrument of their own. I respectfully very generous donation. Therefore, I respectfully request that you approve that donation as required by Ohio law.
You have heard the recommendation from Mrs. Cropper. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second that. Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item on the treasurer's agenda are the financial statements, bills paid list, and investments for the month and the fiscal year to date ended May 31st, 2014. If I could direct your attention to the first page of our financial statement, you'll see all funds had an unencumbered balance of $18.7 million. Going to the general fund, which is presented on the next couple pages for the fiscal year, you'll see that the district had a decent cash flow months in terms of revenues. We received our second installment of 2 in the homestead and rollback area, and we received $2.1 million. The other primary revenue received during the month was the State Foundation Fund, which is a monthly revenue of $1.8. As you see, we continue to get good news in our revenues. For the first time in many years, it's only happened twice in my decade here with the schools, we've had an increase in our property tax collection. So as the economy starts to improve, we are getting a little bit more revenue from both our local property taxes and from the state as well. You see, as far as expenditures from the month, they were, as projected, right around $6.2 million. And with 92% of our year passed, the district has spent 87% of its appropriations. The district continues to look under every rock, as you ask, to find cost savings and efficiencies, both in our staffing and in our purchasing of purchase services and materials and supplies. The following page presents the expenditures as a functional area rather than an expense area, depending on how you'd like to view the information. That said, I respectfully request that you acknowledge and accept the financial statements, bills paid lists, and investments for the month and the fiscal year to date ended May 31st.
You've heard the recommendation from Mrs. Cropper. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Treasurer's comments?
That concludes my agenda for this evening.
Okay. Superintendent's business, overnight field trip?
We do have an overnight field trip request from both Amelia and Glen Estee High Schools. It is an annual camp that our students go to that are a part of the yearbook staff. Students will go and learn how to manage the new software, techniques for doing layouts, those types of things. The trip is chaperoned by a West Claremont teacher. We expect probably between 8 to 10 students all told going on this camp. Herf Jones, who we give our yearbooks through, pays a portion of that, and then the students pay the remainder of that fee for that particular camp. So there's no cost to the general fund here in the district. With that being said, I'd like to respectfully request that the board approve the overnight field trip for both Amelia and Glen Estee High Schools to attend yearbook camp at Heidelberg University in July.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second it. Discussion?
Dr. Klein, I noticed on the agenda that there was, again, only one chaperone planned to attend, and I've voiced my concerns with that. I'd like to see a second chaperone.
Yeah, originally, this was just Amelia High School's application, though my understanding is there'll be someone from both high schools attending, so we would double that. We usually try to go with a 10-to-1 ratio, but I think it's important, too, that we have somebody from both high schools represented.
I think in today's age, to protect our students and the adult, there has to be more than one adult with them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Personnel, Dr. Klein?
Yes, we have several items on the personnel agenda for this evening, several resignations, and I've mentioned in the past, we do have some employees who are deciding to opt for employment in other school districts. Largely what we're hearing back from those folks are it's a matter of salary. As our freeze continues, we continue to plummet to the bottom of this area's salary schedules, and that we're losing a lot of good people as a result. That being said, on personnel recommendations, we are heavy into the hiring season. Dr. Moffitt and his office is working hard to get folks interviewed, get them out to buildings so they can be interviewed and get them on the board agenda for recommended employment. We have several certified staff personnel items or individuals on there. Supplemental appointments for volleyball this coming school year. Our special education parapros are employed and automatically non-renewed on an annual basis. These are the hiring piece for these folks for the upcoming school year. Several school volunteers, which certainly we appreciate. Some classified substitute personnel, and a list of stipends for your approval as well. With that being said, I'd like to respectfully request that the board approve the personnel agenda as presented.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second. Discussion?
Yes, I noticed one was left off from the original agenda, and I've been contacted by folks that we aren't posting jobs that need to be posted, and this was the second one that I had been made aware of that we were initially going to replace or appoint someone tonight. The job hadn't been posted, and I know that the job wasn't. I've been told by two other individuals that the job for the Amelia Middle School principal wasn't posted as well. I think that's incumbent upon us to post it and let everybody that's interested in the job make themselves known so that we can find the best candidates, not just pick them from amongst our group of friends.
Well, there is no legal requirement for us to post administrative positions. That being said, I believe it's good practice to do so. Going into, and we've already voted obviously on the middle school principal, so I won't belabor that, but going into those interviews, had an opportunity to interview folks. A team of 14, 16 people did it as well, and felt that the folks that we were able to find were well suited for those positions. We did realize today, when Ms. Sanborn contacted me, that we had posted the curriculum specialist position as a half-time position, not as a full-time position. And certainly we will go back and repost that, and I expect to bring a recommendation to the board at our next meeting on June 26th. I believe that's the omission you were speaking of.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Motion carried. Superintendent's comments?
I just wanted to give the board a little bit of an update. I put at your seats this evening some legislative update information that's been shared with me. What I'll say is our legislators have been very busy the last week or so in Columbus, getting some work done before they went on recess. We are in the process right now of interpreting the laws that they have put out before they went to recess for the summer. I did give you a summary of the information that was included, particularly in House Bill 487, as well as House Bill 362. Don't want to go through all of these this evening because that would be relatively lengthy in nature. And a lot of this information, I said it on a conference call today, they're still interpreting what the legislature has intended with their actions the past week or so. What I will say, there's a couple things I want to bring to your attention. And of course, if we have questions about things as we move forward, I will work to make sure that we get answers as soon as we have them available. One thing I did want to mention specifically is graduation requirements. The state is making a pretty major shift in how we do graduation requirements throughout Ohio. In the past, you'll recall that all students had to pass the Ohio graduation test in order to be able to earn a high school diploma. That, of course, is in addition to the course requirements set forth by this district and the state of Ohio. That is changing with the class of 2018, and those youngsters are coming to us at our high schools as ninth graders this coming year, so it's going to have a pretty dramatic immediate impact. They are changing from the OGT, and anybody who's going to be a junior, senior, or sophomore still have to take the OGT. But this incoming group of ninth graders they'll be on a new model, which involves taking 7 end-of-course exams for which they have to accumulate so many points for passing scores. Those tests are in the area of algebra, geometry, English 1, English 2, American history, government, and physical science. The legislature went on then to give some other caveats to that initial rule. One is students who are involved in advanced placement or international baccalaureate or dual enrollment may take assessments aligned with those courses in lieu of end-of-course exams. And one other big piece of this legislation is that students who are in a remediation-free score on a nationally recognized college admission exam in the 11th grade would also meet the requirements for end-of-course exams. The state did, in fact, and many times we get mandates that aren't funded. It was interesting with this particular piece of legislation that the state is planning to pay for all 11th graders in the state of Ohio, for them to take, what I read in legislation was the ACT, starting this next school year. So that'll be an interesting twist on what we've done in the past. There's also some language in here that talks about, when they talk about nationally recognized college admission exams, really there are 2 recognized in this country, the SAT and the ACT. But then further legislation talked about the state providing funding for the ACT. And I didn't see that with SAT. We'll continue to get clarification on that as the summer progresses. The other big piece that I wanted to mention this evening is around the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. There are some changes in House Bill 362 that was passed by the legislature, talking about the frequency of evaluation for teachers who are rated accomplished or skilled. Teachers who are rated accomplished would be on a 3-year cycle. Teachers who are rated skilled would be on a 2-year cycle. But even if they're on a mid-year, they're not being evaluated that year, they still must be observed and have a conference with their administrator. There's some other caveats, other things that are part of that particular law, including some alternative frameworks that we could use, and we're kind of working on digesting that and seeing if it makes sense in our current situation. The one thing I will say is both of these laws and all of the pieces and parts of them have been passed by both houses of the legislature and are awaiting the governor's signature. And as I understand it, the governor has line item veto powers. So we'll have to see what he chooses to do about all of these pieces that relate to schools. In the past, last summer, I know we had the budget bill, and it took him a while to finally sign off on that. So I've not heard anything from Columbus at this point that talks about the time frame for his signature or his decision to to veto specific lines. So as that information becomes available, certainly we'll share it with the board. A lot of changes in Columbus. It's that time of year. I'll expect that we will see changes to policy, recommended changes to policy from Neola, probably late summer into early September, which is typically the time frame. Once everything's interpreted, they have an opportunity to draft a sample policy. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on where we are legislatively and the changes that will be coming. We certainly have a lot of work to do around this legislation. First of all, interpreting exactly what the legislature means, and then how do we implement that in our schools. But we'll stay up on it and share that information as it becomes available.
Thank you.
Any discussion about that? Okay. Public comment, speaking at the board meetings, Richard Lamrish, board appointment.
Hi, I'm Richard Lamrish. I live at 4762 Clatty Road. I've been a lifelong resident of Claremont County. In fact, I attended the Mount Carmel Glen Estee school system. My 3 kids went through the regular West Claremont school system. Now, on the election of your board members, the voters appear to have spoken. They want change. Now, I wish to support Jeff Cole, and a lot of the other stuff I could speak about has already been covered many, many times over. You should appoint Jeff Cole to the replacement board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie Seagroth, support new school board member.
Hello, my name is Debbie Seagroth. I live at 525 Elmridge Court. I have lived in West Claremont for 40 years. My 2 daughters graduated from Glen Estee High School. I'm here to support Denise Smith as school board member. And let me tell you why. Denise has experience as a school board member and leader of our community. She has vision. Let me give you an example of that. She helped start the West Claremont School Foundation that just started recently and is very much needed. She started the Glen Estee High School after prom and had many people help her, but she was the leader of it. She has been a volunteer for many years in the West Claremont School District. Denise Smith cares and wants to make a difference. Denise, thank you for your dedication. That is why I am asking for the board to appoint Denise Smith to the vacant seat for school board. Thank you.
Thank you. David Schaaf, moving the district forward.
Good evening. My name is David Schaaf. I live at 945 Shireton Court here in West Claremont. I think I'm the last speaker, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm the only person who's applied for this position who has spoken to you directly. I don't envy your position right now. There's 4 of you, there's 10 of us, and you have to make a choice for one of the 10 of us. You've heard a lot of comments last week from Mr. Rudy, this week's from Mr. Coles, some from Mrs. Smith, and I emailed Mrs. Cropper last week to find out where we were in the process. I was told that Judge Shriver has says that he doesn't believe that the board has done all it could to select a new board member, and I would tend to agree with him. In the public sector, in the private sector, we submit resumes and our interest for a position, and then we are interviewed for those positions. So I would like to take the remainder of my time to open up to you to ask me questions. And in the interest of fairness, I'd like to invite the other appointees, Mr. Coles, Mr. Rudy, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Newhaven, if you're here, Mr. Thacker, to come up here and do the same. I'm sure that we would all like to answer your questions. We are all interested in the board seat, or else we would not have applied. We would not have ran for the position, whether this election or previous election. So I would ask that if you have any questions for me, please ask. If you have questions for the others, we have time. Please ask. Okay. Thank you. I hope you make a good choice. Thank you.
Board business, appointment of a new board member. Yeah.
I do want to interject just for a moment and update the community on where we stand at this point. After our last board meeting on June 9th, today's June 9th, in May, when we met last in May, the board was at a stalemate on several candidates for the vacancy that exists on the board. Board counsel has been in contact with Judge Shriver at the probate court, and Judge Shriver's expectation is that the board again attempt to fill that vacancy at tonight's meeting. If that does not take place, there is a resolution that must be passed by the Board of Education stating so, that will be delivered to Judge Shriver's office. We did get a little bit of information about what the process would be after that. If it is moved over to the probate court, the court would, and these are information through our legal counsel from the court would publish notice of the board vacancy in the newspaper, general circulation in the West Claremont School District. Court would request school district to provide it with a copy of the application that we provided to the persons who were interested in filling Mr. Merchant's vacancy. The court would require a cover letter and resume of any applicant that was interested. And lastly, Judge Shriver would personally conduct interviews of all applicants and then make a decision. Judge Shriver did give us a little bit of an indication on timelines. And if the process is initiated, then we expect that we would not hear a decision rendered until August 1st at the earliest. So I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. I know you got that memo, but I also wanted to make sure that the community was aware of the process and where we stood at this point in time. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to the board for deliberation.
Well, I think from the executive session, we're well aware that we're still at a stalemate and there's no sense of wasting everybody's time going through it again, unless we're just doing it at the grandstand. I would like to apologize for Mr. Link for the last meeting where he was smeared by one of our board members when given the opportunity to correct what was misinformation given. She chose not to have that corrected, and I apologize on behalf of the board for not treating you properly last time. But again, I would think we just need to go to the resolution. We're not going to, unless you've changed your mind and won't consider the two that are the lead candidates that are fiscal conservative candidates, which the people elected, I think there's no point in going forward.
And while I respect your opinion, we have to respect Judge Shriver's. We were given 10 applications to consider. 2 of them have been ruled out by us, me. 3 of them had been ruled out by you. That list grew from 3 to 5. I still think that we have 6 candidates that we should be talking about and considering. He's expecting us to work together. We need to find a way of working together to get this accomplished.
Well, I think the people have spoken. As you've heard tonight, when it was not just stacked with Rudy supporters, that the people in the community are looking for fiscal conservatives. That's what they thought they elected the last election. And the 2 candidates that I'm supporting are both in that mold, known in that mold. There's 3 that are totally out of the question, and 2 that I think would not work well with the current board. The others I'm not convinced would be viable candidates.
Okay, so as we discussed in our executive session, when we met last time, there were candidates that you ranked as number 3 and number 4. And within 5 minutes of that, you went from number 3 to being absolutely no. How did we get there from you considering them to absolutely nothing.
I had a change of mind when I thought and looked at my notes
You thought that we
again.
might come to a consensus.
No, I didn't think.
And it wasn't your
There
guy.
was no consensus being reached in there. Neither you nor Steve had talked with any of the other people. I'm the only one that interviewed any of the others other than the two that you knew.
We know a lot of these candidates. We know them because they either have worked in the community where we work in, or they've been involved in the schools in the process, and we've been exposed to these people. So I didn't feel like I needed to call them personally and grill them as to why I feel or they feel that they're the best candidate. We came into this process with a person that we thought would do the best job, but 6 others that we would consider.
You gave no indication that the previous executive meeting, when offered the opportunity to appoint somebody other than Jim Rudy, you made no offer.
That's because we met in an executive prior to that, and we agreed, the 4 of us agreed we were going to come out here and we were going to put 2 candidates up for a vote, and we did exactly what we committed we were going to do. So don't criticize me for not doing something that we didn't agree to doing.
We never agreed to limit it.
Yes, we did.
There was 2 I was definitely for, and the third one I might have considered.
Okay?
Further consideration, I changed
third.
my mind on further consideration because of re-looking at my notes on that conversation. You made no indication in that meeting other than Denise Smith and Jim Rudy that you knew anybody else on that list other than Jeff Coles who you were dead set against. So, there was
I wasn't dead set on them. The only 2 that I said I was dead set against was Mr. Coles because of our past experience and what he's verbally said that he is interested in doing with the district, which is not aligned with my thoughts, which is fair enough. And then the other candidate because I said that I didn't believe that he had our best interest and there was misinformation on his application.
Which was not misinformation. You didn't have the proper information.
When I'm
You
told
did not interpret it properly. The information was correct on the application, and you chose to think it was wrong.
We asked
smeared
about it, and when I
claimed
was told that his kids go to school with my children, I said, okay, I investigated, and we had nobody enrolled by that name in that school.
his daughter's going to the West Claremont School, through the West Claremont School District to Great Oaks.
The question is, are your children
And you chose to smear him
enrolled?
and he was right there. You could have
Let's
asked him
move
a
on.
question.
Let's
So
move
let's
on.
move on. Let's
Okay.
put the resolution out.
No, we'd like to put these candidates on the floor to show that we are interested in working together as we are committed to doing.
No, you're interested in grandstanding, not showing we can work
No,
together.
if I was grandstanding, I would ask you why you called me last night and asked me, what do I need to do to persuade you to vote for Jeff Coles? And my response, absolutely nothing. And the next question, after receiving an email earlier in the week that said you should resign, you said, how about if we make you vice president of the board?
We must maintain decorum in this meeting this evening, or otherwise I will adjourn this meeting. Thank
So,
you.
in the best interest of the district, in the best interest of the students with my very narrow mind, I think that we should look at the other 6 candidates and put them on the floor in the form of a motion to say, can we agree to any of these? We need 3 votes.
Put them on the floor.
I'll make a motion that we consider Denise Smith, or nominate Denise Smith to serve in the vacant board position.
I second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
I'll throw David Schaff on the floor in the form of a motion.
Hang on, it'll take me a minute to get it all in here, so sorry, apologize for that.
I think any of these candidates would make a good addition to the district. They bring to the table something different than what's already up here. They have different ideas, different opinions. They may be different political parties. We are not a political party up here. That's totally to the side. we should be looking at who's going to represent our district and represent it as a whole, our community, our teachers, our staff, our students, everybody, not just a narrow, set of people, the whole population of people.
Well, with all due respect, Mrs. Brinkman, the applicants only had 2.5 days to apply for this board position.
Absolutely.
And I think that, in all due respect, there should have been other applicants outside the district to fill this position. And I know we were in a time strain, but there must be decorum in this meeting, please. With all due time restraint, I think that we were pushed for time, but I really feel that there should have been other applicants that had an opportunity to apply for this position.
I couldn't agree with you more. But unfortunately, we're confined with the laws and with the timing of getting our graduates approved so that they could graduate at the time that we have designated for graduation. We had to act quickly. We have the 10 applications and we have what's in front of us. We have to move from there. He's expecting us to work together. We're willing to work.
Hey, Tina.
Decorum, please.
So with that, I nominate Dave Schaff.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
I nominate Jeff Coles.
I second that. Any other discussion? Nope. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
No.
Mr. Waldman?
No.
I'd like to nominate Jimmy Link.
I nominate Jimmy Wink.
I'd second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I'm curious how the last time when you were in this meeting, you said that you were loyal to your buddy who unfortunately lost his life earlier than anyone would have expected, and that you wish to honor his dying wish of appointing Jeff Coles, but then you nominate Jimmy Link.
That's because I'm trying to work with this board. You asked me to work with this board tonight, and that's what you said earlier in your discussion. So I'm trying to do what you asked me to do. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mrs. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
No.
Mr. Waldman?
No. I'll nominate Kevin Baldeshare to fill the vacant board position.
And a second?
Yep. Second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
I'd like to nominate Bill Canadian.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
I'll nominate William Arthur Hannigan to serve in the vacant board position.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
I'd like to nominate Jim Rudy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
No.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Do you have any other nominations?
We've exhausted every application that we've received.
No, we haven't. There's Mr. Thacker,
Okay.
and there's Mr. Barrett.
Oh, you're right. I apologize for that. Those are the two that we agreed. Kind of unanimous.
Nominated.
Do you want to nominate either one?
I didn't want to go through the charade to start with.
Neither did we.
Well, you're the
We're
one, you're the
demonstrating
ones
that
grandstanding.
No,
Not
we're
me.
demonstrating we want to work to find a
No,
replacement.
you're wanting to grandstand. You've succeeded in grandstanding. Go ahead. I'll nominate Mr. Thacker.
Do I have a second?
No second, I
Motion
guess.
died for lack of second. Mrs. Crawford?
No second? Okay, I'll nominate Mr. Barrett.
Second?
No second? I guess
Roll call died for lack of second.
then I would like we'll bring the motion to turn it to the judge. What's the
I didn't hear that.
What's the word, what the proposal, whatever the necessary paperwork is that we have to forward it to the judge for decision?
A motion to forward it to the
Yeah,
probate judge?
Right, what's that?
The resolution.
The
The resolution.
To the probate judge? Okay.
Would you read that, please?
I can read it. I have copies. Do you want me to read it as well?
Why, we have to read it into the record, don't we?
It's a resolution authorizing the treasurer to notify the Claremont County Probate Court of the board's failure to fill a vacancy on the Board of Education. Whereas a vacancy currently exists on the West Claremont Local School District Board of Education due to the May 14, 2014 death of Mark Merchant, and whereas Ohio Revised Code 331311 authorizes the board to fill such a vacancy at its next regular or special meeting held not earlier than 10 days after such vacancy occurs, and whereas Ohio Revised Code 331385 provides that in the event a local school district board of education fails to fill a vacancy on its board within 30 days after the vacancy occurs, the probate court of the county in which the district is located, upon being advised and satisfied of that failure, shall act as that board to fill any vacancies as promptly as possible. And whereas the board attempted to fill the vacancy on the board at its regularly scheduled meetings held on May 27th and June 9th, 2014, but failed to do so. And whereas the board now wishes to request that the Claremont County Probate Court act as the board pursuant to its authority provided by Ohio Revised Code 331385 to fill the vacancy on the board as promptly as possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the board's treasurer is hereby directed to do all things necessary to notify and advise the Claremont County Probate Court of the board's failure to fill a vacancy on its board and the board's intent that the court act as the board to fill such a vacancy as promptly as possible. It is found and determined that all formal action of the board concerning or related to the adoption of this resolution was adopted in an open meeting of the board, and that all deliberations of the board that resulted in such formal action were adopted in meetings open to the public in compliance with all applicable requirements of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Jim Lewis moved, and we need a second to the motion.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Board comments? Executive session? I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
The next meeting will be Thursday, June 26th at the Union Township Civic Center. Thank you so much for coming this evening.
Sorry, one correction. It's at Withamsville, Tabasco Elementary School.
Okay, sorry.
There was a township trustee meeting, I believe, that evening at the Civic Center.
Okay, it's at the Union Township School, so please come and join us at 7 p.m.
Township School.
Withamsville, Tabasco.
Withamsville, Tabasco School. Thank you for coming this evening. Good night.
Mrs. Frankman? Yes. Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.